All right. Let me share what helped me a whole lot.
Okay.
I would not have too many people read this. I would write letters to God.
Oh, I love that.
Yes. I mean, I was serious and I was going through different things. And,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it at this time, all the things I was going through, I was married and struggling with my wife. I had 3 kids to raise. I'm contemplating this, I'm contemplating that. I had
Mm-hmm.
nowhere to go. So I wrote letters to God. If I look through
That is
my
lovely.
journals, I still have all the journals that I had 10 years ago. I keep them and I go back and look at the progress that
Yeah.
I made and
Yes.
things I still have to work on. And I would say it helped me greatly to just survive. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't seeking for nobody else to read it, but I had to express it.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't talk like I
Mm-hmm.
can talk now. But I would say I wrote over 100 letters to God back in that day, and it helped me. So if anybody's out there listening, maybe that's something that can be helpful to you, only between you and God. And
For
it
sure.
helped me greatly.
Yeah, and it can be journaling even just to yourself. If everybody don't have the same religious beliefs that we do, but there are other ways to connect with your higher power, and that writing is a definite one. Or even just to have some solace in, expressing what your goals are and things of that nature. Because that's what journaling does too. You express your emotions, but then you also talk about what's important to you. Gratitude journaling is ideal. Because it helps you get things into perspective. But we recognize a lot of different things when we journal them, because there are so many mental health benefit. It curbs depression and anxiety. Because you're not holding it in, which then makes you feel like you have to isolate because you can't express it to anybody. You feel like nobody's hearing you. You have a way to express it and without judgment, and you can understand yourself, self-awareness a lot more too. So it's a lot of benefits to journaling. I love that you wrote those letters and then you went back and read them.
Yes. I
I
also
love that's
uh,
important.
would make a chart normally along with that letter to God. And the chart is kind of like an inventory. The first part on the chart is family and change.
Uh-huh.
And I would say, where am I at with my kids, my ex-wife, or some of the things I needed to do that was very important. Number 2 on the chart was usually health. Number 3 was associations. Who am I
You
connected to?
you
I
were
still
rolling
do. I still do
writing.
that sometimes.
I love that. That is values clarification. We use that as a tool in therapy because it's important to identify what you value, and in like those relationships and connections, right? If that's something that you value, then determining what it looks like that is when it's at its peak of its value. Meaning, are you putting your energy in those areas that are important to you, and what about those areas are, and then actually moving towards those in your everyday life. And when we forget, because life gets to life, and right? Then we can go back and reflect on what we could change to actually live according to our values.
Number 4 was expressive uh, things that are expressive to me and expressive passion. For
So
me, that
leader.
is what am I writing? Because I'm always writing. What am I
Mm-hmm.
writing about? What is important? Number 5, excuse me, number 7 always was my relationship to God. Then, I have one. Now, the other ones can change, but
Mm-hmm.
normally those 5 are standard. Then you have other ones that might change according to what's going on in your life.
For
So
sure.
I still do that today,
I love that.
and it's been helpful. Right now, I'm in a good place. I may not do it as much, but I still fall back on that a lot of times. I just want to talk a little bit more about communication.
Okay.
Communication is the focus of growth of civilizations. If
For
we
sure.
look back through the growth of civilization, they grew the more they could communicate
Mm-hmm.
by writing. If you go back to ancient Egypt, they got the hieroglyphics, and that is one of their processes of growth in communication. So it's very important. It's a big factor. And then all forms of communication are important. And the better you can do with that, the better you can communicate and grow, I believe. Okay, is there one form of communication that is more important to your mental health, or are they all equally important in your opinion?
They all are, but the self-talk, that communication, how you speak to yourself, is the basis of all mental health or unhealth, right? So self-talk is something that we say to ourselves uh, in regards to what we think we are capable of, that kind of thing. But those internal messages then present themselves in our behavior, which is also communication in our everyday lives with other people. So I think that in regards to most stable mental health, how we communicate with ourselves is the most important. And then after that, the three forms of communication, was that what you were referring to?
What are they? And then I'll tell you if that's what I was talking about.
Okay. So the actual words, right? Vocal communication. So that could be speaking, but it also can be, singing or different forms of communication vocally like that. And then nonverbal communication, which is like the body language, etc.
If I may ask, an example of self-talk is, I'm so dumb, I can't do nothing right.
Exactly.
That's a negative.
That's self-talk, but it's an example, yeah.
Yes. And then I can be the king of the world. It's positive self-talk, but it might be fantasy at the same time.
And we call that grandiose thinking, or yeah. But I mean, if you are saying that as an affirmation, okay, there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you're not going around and behaving, right? Because behavior is the primary form of communication that the world sees of you. Then if you're not going around behaving and treating other people like you are the king of the world and you're not, there's no problem. Now, there is a problem if you're behaving in that way, though.
Yes, very much so. I can understand that. Who are some of the proponents? I believe, if I remember my upbringing, Norman Vincent Peale talked about self-talk. Of course, the Bible has some good self-talk in it. I mean, different things, but I guess your family can implant some
for sure.
in your mind.
For sure. For sure.
In your subconscious. I learned this week that how important subconscious self-talk is, that you might hear positive or negative. It can help you. I gave the example when I was a young man, I kind of operated on my urges, my feelings, my different things that I wanted to do. I wanted to be liked. I wanted people to pay attention, to see me, and so forth. So I did all kind of things that would try to get attention. But then when I came to real bad difficulty, I drew back on those subconscious things that I knew or I had learned from my dad. My dad went to work every day. My dad used education and intelligence to try to further himself. So those are the things that I drew back upon when I was trying to get out of the darkness. So I understand that, and I learned a lot more about that. Let me ask another question.
Yes, sir.
Is there a form of communication that can be confused or misinterpreted easily?
For sure. That's nonverbal communication.
None, yes. Now, I gave the example of a side like that. That can be misinterpreted. I've had so many experiences with nonverbal communication. I'm sitting up, picking up my kids, and I'm sitting down there. I'm thinking, and I'm not saying anything. And the person says to me, "Who do you think you are? What are you? You sitting there thinking you high on the hog." That was not in any of my thinking, but people will look at me and they used to always say, you think you this, you think you that. And
Mm,
a lot of it, I think, stem from my vocabulary can be, some people could take it as intimidating.
mm,
I've heard that also. I've heard, why do you always try to speak in big words? Well, they don't understand that in my household, that's how my dad talked, and I just picked it up from him. And then I took it
mm.
even further because that's what interests me. But other people may not see where you're coming from and they think different things. And I haven't said a thing. I have not said a thing. So they bring all of those particular things. But that's a
That,
part
that's,
of nonverbal communication. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
that's the judgment that I'm referring to, right?
I've been
Because
through it all my life.
in our culture, in the world, right, we judge people based on social acceptance or adapting to what is common in our everyday lives that we expect, and those are expectations, right? Behavioral expectations of humans. And the thing is that we're all different and we all have different beliefs, and as long as we're respecting one another, we're okay. But if we're trying to get acceptance in those spaces because we don't know what their expectations are when we first go to, just what you were saying, when you were a young man, you don't know what it's like to be an adult in the world on your own, so you try to figure it out, so you then try to adapt to the spaces that you're in, but then you're still being judged because you're not responding in the way that the common group of people think you should. I mean, I think we all in some points of our lives experience that. It's just, again, how you speak to yourself after, when you learn um, what that really means to you. I don't look like a typical therapist. So, like, when I go in uh, business settings where there are other therapists and I'm the eyeball out, I have to have a level of confidence just to bring with me, because when the first thing that people see is my hair, and then they're like, oh well, what, she can't be professional or whatever else, whatever the expectation is, because I don't look like what is expected. And so I think in that space I had to find where I am comfortable and speak to myself in a way that uplifts me so that I can be that best part of me in that environment. And it's just learning and adapting. And then how you communicate. Just because my hair looks a certain way doesn't mean that I don't know how to articulate certain things. And when I open my mouth, that's proof, right? So,
Most
yeah.
definitely. And I have found your associations, like they say, who you surround yourself with,
Oh, yeah.
that matters in that also. If
Yep.
you surround yourself around people who can't understand or be open to where you're coming from, then that's going to affect you and so forth. And that's going to affect your perception of the people who are around you.
For
And
sure.
so I've learned that a lot more in this day and age also. But communication is very important across the board, and it's a lifetime perfecting it. It's a lifetime. It's not just something, and like with the politicians, but we all have to be politicians a little bit sometimes. You might have a certain communication with this group of people.
Oh, yeah.
You have, as you were saying, when you're around the therapist, you have to maybe come a certain way, but maybe
Hmm.
when you get in your household with your sisters, you have a whole nother communication.
For
And
sure.
I found that also. And you have to be adept at being able to be kind of a chameleon in that concept. And that's just a part of life. So, what are some important things to remember in communication for good mental health that we would like to share with the audience?
Oh, it's so many things. The percentages, I think, is important. You remember I talked about the wording. So how things are worded is only 7% of communication. 38% is vocal, and 55% is body language, or nonverbal.
38% is vocal, 62%
Mhm.
is nonverbal,
No, 55.
55 is nonverbal.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And then only 7% is the wording. And that's
Wording.
important. The way the words you use, right?
Okay. Okay.
But if you're going to, and I have to be mindful of that in certain spaces, but especially if I'm confident about what I can provide my clients when they come to therapy, right? That's important because if I am just looking like I don't care and I'm like, or I'm just a stickler, and then they don't know, this is the first time there, and they don't know what to expect, and they don't want to be judged because that's what people fear a lot of the times when they come. Then I won't be able to help them feel safe enough to be able to feel comfortable to move forward in the process of therapy. So that nonverbal part is the most of it. I mean, if I'm looking at you and I'm not smiling at you, I'm not. I don't look like I'm having a good day. I'm looking away and I'm not confident and I'm not, or I'm questioning what I'm saying, but you can see by my eyes that I'm insecure. You're not going to trust me, right? And that is what we have to focus on most when we're trying to communicate something that is articulating what we need or what we are not okay with, whatever else. That is the most important thing. We got to check in with ourselves and how we feeling first in regards to our nonverbal communication. Because if you're talking to somebody and you rolling your eyes the whole time and you know there was already an issue, then they're not going to want to have a conversation with you in the first place because they don't feel like that is welcome. Like you're not in a good place to actually communicate that. So that nonverbal is a really, really huge piece. And a lot of people focus on the words more than that. And that is a big mistake because the words don't matter as much as your body language does.
I have seen during these shows that people can conjure up different ideals and things
Mm-hmm.
by a sigh, uh, the way somebody says something, and they can think up different things that weren't said and
Mm-hmm.
come up with them. And I've seen that many times. I believe you have also.
Oh, and I have responded in that way.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
I understand.
I'm not. I'm not ashamed of taking accountability for that. If I feel that it is some resistance or some competitive something that's unnecessary, I am annoyed. I don't. We're having conversations here. There's no reason for any of the you right, you right. Just let's have a conversation about what all our perspectives and that education's taught us, so that we can help educate the world or the community that we're attempting to. So yeah, I will respond and I get frustrated, and by body language and tone and all those things for sure.
I want to explain to the audience that some people are very aware of ways of trying to use words to try to get leverage. And they can try to use, because when we meet somebody up subconsciously, sometimes consciously, they are saying, okay, I'm better than this person. This is why. And it happens almost automatically.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not careful, you can be very judgmental and try to find different ways to try to bring that to bear. I just come from a world of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I've learned not to be judgmental just by how somebody looks.
Mm-hmm.
And we are notorious about that. And I have to be careful myself. But the way I was raised, I have been taught be careful about that because you never know. But some people try to use that as a leverage, and you got to be careful of that. I give you an example. there's a guy, you know, I was trying to talk to him about family and so forth, and he would always say, well, I'm just having a conversation about my kids. And he would always come back to the fact that your kids don't like you, they don't respect you. And, you know, I realized that he was trying to preach into my mind to have some type of leverage so I would feel kind of vulnerable and come to him for answers and so forth.
Oh,
And
so
I finally realized that, and I had to say, okay, hold up. That ain't what I'm coming to you for. I didn't actually tell him that. I just backed off. But people have different ways, and they'll try to assess you and figure out how they can get leverage.
Now, I got a question.
Yes. Go ahead.
Why didn't you tell him?
It had got to the conversation. Now, I had an opportunity to tell him at another time, not in that conversation, but another time, because during the COVID pandemic, he tried to set me down. I asked him to borrow something on one of my neighbors, and he wanted to have a conversation about, I rolled my eyes and you don't need to wear a mask. They telling you that, but you need to pay attention to me. You don't need to wear your mask. And that's what really, I finally told him, I said, okay, I'm responsible for my health, and I decide that I want to wear a mask or not. And I told him that. And then he came to me and said, before that, he said, you know, I know you better than you know yourself. And that light bulb went off right there. So I said, okay, no, brother. And that made me totally back off. But I had already had those thoughts. But being that it's a neighbor, you still trying to be cordial.
I understand.
Yeah. But at that, go ahead.
I don't know. It still don't sound like you talked to him about that, though.
Well, all of that led up to, and I had to assess where is he coming from with this. That's why I didn't tell him at the time about, you know, saying negative things about how my kids feel about me. You know, and I'm still was assessing that. But when he finally said that, and the thing about the mask, that was the last straw. I understood at that time what he was trying to do, where he was coming from. And it takes a while. And again, I'm trying to be cordial because this is my neighbor.
But see, that's exactly the opposite of what you said earlier. I mean, realistically, you understood based on your interpretation of what he meant by it. You didn't ask him what he meant. And I think that's where we get all, you know.
Well, based upon some previous things, like I said, you know, he said this about my family relationship with me because of things I was, you know, sharing and so forth. And but that last straw, it crystallized. I wasn't totally sure where he was coming from at first, but then it crystallized after he said these other things. I said, okay, I know what this guy is trying to do now. I understand it. So, I mean, I arrived at that summation. Maybe I should have said something earlier, understood earlier, but maybe sometimes it takes me a little bit longer.
And we all have our own preferences in situations that we're uncomfortable in. But in this topic of communication, and that's your neighbor, he gonna be there until he ain't no more, right? Like, realistically, I'm not comfortable with having these conversations because I'm not sure what your intentions are or what that means, or I feel judged. It's okay to say when you have the energy and you have process your emotions about it. Like you did, you took a break. I support that 1,000%. You don't need have to address everything right then. But if that's somebody that you interact with regularly, yeah, maybe yeah, what we not gonna do anymore? Let's talk about my kids because I think we have different perspectives, and you don't, or I don't feel comfortable talking about the mask because we have different beliefs, and I just care about my health and other people's health too, and you have different perspectives, so we're not gonna have a conversation about it anymore.
I just have to say, people think differently, and
Yeah.
Different people. It might take me a little bit longer. My mind doesn't work as quickly like that. I had to go back and think about it a second.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always kind of been that way, but when I actually realized, I say, okay, like I had this conversation with a guy. He was saying he was well. First of all, what happened was he was trying to sell me some crypto, and I said I wasn't interested in that, and he said, "Well, don't be scared." And I said, "Oh, I'm not scared, brother. I'm a thinking man." And I think he got upset with that, but he didn't share that. But every other interaction that happened after that, you know, he started kind of slyly trying to attack me. And sometimes we were in a group setting on Zoom, and he would try to attack me. And I said something. Oh, I know. I sent out a group text, and he took the group text that was trying to say, hey, we need to stand up and be strong and all of this kind of stuff. And he took it that I was saying it directly to him. And so he attacked me. And I realized he got the wrong perception of how I was sending that. So I apologized. Bro. Now, when I apologized, I guess he felt that I was kind of soft and was going to back down and so forth. But see, you got to know who I am. I have no problem apologizing. That's a part of who I am. And
That's one thing about
go
you.
ahead.
That's
What happened later was um, he, I guess, wanted to get leverage again, and he was trying to share some things because I lead the meeting, and he was trying to say, hey, nobody likes you, this, that, and the other. Everybody thinks you're a fool, which I knew was not true. But I saw what he was trying to do. He was trying to put me down to get leverage. And I finally had to tell him, brother, don't call or text me no more. Now, he does not participate with the group anymore. I'm still the leader of the Zoom call, and he does not participate because he saw. And once I realized what he was doing, and it took a while for me to understand where he was coming from, because I want to get along with everybody.
I know.
I want to get along with everybody, and sometimes people take that for weakness.
Right.
But when I understand what's going on, like I told him, I said, brother, don't call me no more. But if he came to the Zoom meeting, I'm standing up stronger. I'm not running. I'm not scared. And he eventually just backed off. And he doesn't even come to the meetings no more. So for me, it takes a while to understand where somebody coming from, unless they just come out and say, hey, I don't like you. I say, okay, well, cool. But if they do nuance and different things, it may take a while to figure it out. And in the subject of communication, there's so many different tricks, and I don't want to just say tricks, let me say ways that people try to do things. And I go back to a lot of people try to seek leverage in the conversation, in the communication.
What do you mean by leverage?
Leverage, they want to be the one that feels superior.
Okay, I got it.
Feels superior. They want to be the one that feels superior, that you have to look up to them, and you come into them for all the answers, for all the permissions, validations, and all of those different things. I would tell you that is one of the big problems between me and my sister. She was always older and had, a certain amount of leverage. But when I started to say, hold up, just because you say it doesn't mean that's necessarily true. And when I started challenging her, she didn't like that. And so I still have to work on, because that's my sister, I still have to work on my relationship with her. It's hard because if I don't agree with her, or I don't adhere to her opinion or what she believes is right, she doesn't want to have a conversation. But I'm gonna continue to work on that. I work with my brother, and we have come to a mutual understanding much better. Now I just have to continue with her.
Well, what I would suggest is that everything that you've been saying, I understand. We have different beliefs, schemas based on our experience, and that's just the expectation of how a situation is going to go based on what we experienced previously, right? But we don't know what people's intentions are, and that's the thing that kind of stood out when what you said. It's kind of like you see what their intentions are based on their behavior, what you believe it is to be. But I think a way to address that is just to ask. And if you don't have the energy or you don't feel like it's worth asking, then it's time to cut that relationship off, because we don't know what people's intentions are. A lot of times I'll be having like the rest and be face, and it's just because I don't feel good because my blood sugar high. But people think it's got something to do with them. You didn't ask me. I'm not trying to, be a certain way, but I just don't feel good. Well, I had a busy, something else happening earlier that day. And a lot of times we do personalize things that aren't personal. They could also be that just that character. And if you say, hey, I'm not comfortable with that, they may change it. So where we have to learn how to make adjustments to have better relationships in communication is to ask more questions.
That's according to your relationship also. With the guy who said nobody likes you, nobody wants you around, that was kind of obvious. I didn't have to ask anything where he was coming from, what he was trying to do. Now with my sister, that's a different nuance. And that's my sister, who's always going to be my family. So, with the guy who necessarily said that, I didn't have to continue a relationship with him. And because of how he tried to handle the situation, I didn't feel it was warranted to try to maintain a relationship with him. Yeah. So it's according to your relationship with that person also. Now, with my neighbor who said, I know you better than I know yourself, that is my neighbor who I'm going to see every other day as I come out the door. And so I'm still trying to have a cordial relationship with him in some particular way, but I did have to tell him, hey, brother, you don't know me better than I know myself. And, that's kind of an offense for you to say that. I didn't break it down like that, but I kind of,
talk to him.
I made him understand that that's where I was coming from. And now our relationship is different, that he understands there's, as you shared, boundaries. He understands that. And he has learned to respect that. And so most relationships are unique, and no two are just alike. No. And so you have to adjust to how your interaction with that particular person. So communication is so important, and being able to communicate. And it's a valuable thing, again, as a teacher, that was one of my greatest attributes, to be able to communicate with the nonverbal students. And they came and got me from all over the campus to communicate with these children. I had one student that he could communicate a little bit, but what he would do is he would just go and hit other students or staff, and everybody was scared of him because he was about 6 feet, about 280. But I was able to communicate with him by getting close to him. First, once I got to see him and observe him, I was not nervous, but of course you have a little trepidation at first, but I was physically, had more dexterity than him, so I could handle that situation. But when I finished with him, he was able to communicate a little bit more effectively, and he stopped doing that around me. And so it was effective in that particular way. And every nonverbal student has their own unique traits and so forth. And you can learn that. And it was a very powerful thing. And nonverbal communication, as you said, is 55% more important than the vocal and the wording. Why is that, you think?
Because we listen with our eyes first.
So you think you can watch somebody and they're nonverbal and without knowing anything and get maybe 25% of their story in some cases?
Not necessarily the story, but I like definitely because that's what we do as therapists. So the majority of it is assessment. It's very little of it, but it's still important. The wording and what people tell us they're experiencing. Like I'll see someone and they say that they're not anxious, but then their leg is shaking and they're distracted and all these other things. And I know that they're uncomfortable about something, and it's usually because they never came to therapy before and they think I'm judging them.
Let me give you another example with my neighbor. He, I a lot of times put my head down. I may not look you in the eye and so forth.
Mhm.
And he tried to, attack me in a way and say, look me in the eye. I said, and at first I looked him in the eye, and then I thought about it. I said, I ain't got to look you in the eye. What you talking about? He said, well, the proper way is to look you in the eye. And I told him, well, in some countries, it's an offense to look people in the eye.
Based on what?
And I have seen, and see, that was a form that he was trying to use of intimidation. But now some people will look at you and think that you're shy and you're a wildflower and they can run over you. I had an experience. I'm at the chess house I like to play chess, and there's a place on Elgin where people from all over the city would come, and you have, of course, prisoners, doctors, reverends, all different kind of people. And so, if you look at me, I can look like I'm shy and I speak in quote unquote big words and so forth. So this guy, he started talking very vulgar to me, and at first I was trying to, talk strong and so forth until I kind of figured out what was his purpose and so forth. And basically, I think he was trying to attack me and make me vulnerable where I'm intimidated and scared and he could manipulate me. There's other parts to it, but I don't want to go too deep into it. But once I figured out go ahead.
I hear you say a lot what their intentions and purpose are, and I just want you to remember, you'll never know. You will never know that.
If I told you more, I think you would understand where I'm coming from. But by his behavior and what he was doing,
I hear you.
He was trying to build leverage. He finally said, if I don't sit there and listen at him talk very vulgar to me, I can't come back to this open spot because I'm not welcome back here. I finally had to say, brother, this is an open park. But what I finally had to do was, and everybody around us was trying to prop up the conflict. They were saying, oh, yeah, this, that, and the other. You know how people talk. And finally, what I said to myself was, okay, I'm not going to play him anymore. I'm not even going to speak to him. So I just backed off. And they tried to pit us together to have us play. And I got up and said, no. And that cut out all the conflict. That cut out all, because he wanted the attention from the crowd. He wanted all the attention from the crowd and try to set me in conflict so he could have that audience to manipulate and try to manipulate. But I took all that away. And it was the most effective thing, one of the most effective things that I've ever done. He stopped coming over there. He would see me there and he would turn around and go back home.
I hear you. But what I'm talking about, the assumptions about what people's intentions and purpose are, not necessarily that specific situation. And the fact is that we don't know. And if
it had been a different person who had handled himself differently, I would have asked. However, by his behavior that he had exhibited, I didn't care about asking. I was just caring about defending myself in the situation and taking away the audience, which I did. So again, it depends upon the person that you're dealing with and what they mean to you in a lot of ways. because you're not going to spend a lot of energy on somebody that you don't really have a relationship with and don't necessarily seek one with. We just playing chess. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of.
But if we're talking about communication, that was a lot of nonverbal communication. And realistically, what we do is make assumptions based off of that, right? So if I'm uncomfortable in the situation, I have my options. And a lot of people don't even think about that because they think about the expectations first. You playing chess, I'm expected to be here and play. No matter what, somebody talking noise about, I'm supposed to be here and play. And that's an expectation of the game and how it works. Now, and usually people don't speak in that term playing a game like chess, right? And so he did something to, like you said, get attention. That's cool. But you do have options. And then that would be a form of communication too. If you just what you did was communication. I ain't playing with him no more. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not comfortable, because that's what the root of everything that you were saying was. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like he has good intentions. But I just feel like, and I know this and I recognize that all of us do this in a certain way, we do make assumptions about what people mean by certain things. And we will never know. Even if we ask them sometimes, they won't tell us the truth. But we will be able to communicate if we are confident that we aren't doing anything to harm someone else intentionally, to say what you will and won't allow. And then that's the boundary part of it. Or separating yourself from something that makes you uncomfortable, because then when you're uncomfortable, your body language change, and that is a form of communication again. And so, you don't want somebody to misinterpret you. You don't want to misinterpret other people. That's cool. But you got to make sure that you feel safe and comfortable enough to be your authentic self in any environment that you are in. And if you're not, then you need to have some conversations with the people in that space. If it's somewhere that you be regularly, like with your neighbor, to be able to make it one that's comfortable or manageable enough to be able to be comfortable in that space. Yeah.
Yes. You would agree, though, that different situations warrant different responses and different types of communication. Is that true?
100%. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying earlier about being around other professionals in a certain environment, right? Like, we have to change how we communicate certain things and what the primary root of the communication is and how we articulate it. And that 7% of wording does matter, because you want to show that you have an education or whatever experience in the field or whatever experience when you were playing chess, right? All those things, because then that's how you relate to one another. Right? That's how you connect to other humans in relatability. If we could be completely different from different sides of the world, even speak different languages, but if we can know how to do something the same way, and we can communicate how we do that, non-verbally or verbally, then we're able to relate to one another. And that is what we need to live a healthy, functioning life and be stable mentally. Our relationships are so tied to that, which is also tied to communication.
Communication is important for your mental health. I mean, especially, we always hear that a man and his wife, if they have good communication, that can help them survive. Boyfriend, girlfriend, same thing. But even family members, right? I mean, like my sister, me and my sister, if we can find a realm of communication, that would help us. So it's very important. And is timing important in communication, and how so? How so is timing important in communication?
I think it depends on your feelings at the moment. We don't want to communicate something that's based in emotion, because then we're not necessarily able to communicate what we need in the moment. It will be heightened.
So you say sometimes you got to leave for a day and think about it and then come back and share what you feel. Is that effective?
I think that, I mean, realistically, we don't know. Our emotions will drive a lot of things. And that can get in the way. Uh-oh. You still there? Okay. That can get in the way of how we communicate the things. So what we have to be intentional about is being able to process, understand, identify our emotions and what contributed to them, and then to be able to communicate what we need from that other person that we're talking to. In anger, we don't do anything but try to defend most of the time because we're angry. So talking when you're angry is not going to get you anywhere, but probably some problems and some trouble. And then the other person won't hear you because they see the body language, because our body language changes when we're angry. So we have to do, really process what it is that we need to communicate, what we need the other person to know, what we do feel, and then also be in a space to be able to put that emotion part to the side for a little bit of the communication, meaning it can't be the emotion at the forefront of the communication. You can't. It's just not going to, that's emotional reasoning, and emotions are not reasonable. They're not
So
any.
are you sharing that, okay, you may not want to say, I really hate what you did at this particular time because it made me feel a certain way. And, you may not want to share that at, in the immediacy. You may take your time and wait to express that, or is it important to express that as you feel it?
It depends on the relationship, honestly, and it depends on what you're able to articulate and if you understand what you're actually feeling. Because again, when we on the onset of an emotion, we're feeling it intensely in our bodies, in our thoughts, everything else. So then we're not able to really communicate the facts. And when we communicate what we need in emotions, because emotions aren't facts, they're feelings, right? Then we'll be able to articulate it in a way that we can actually be heard. If you are emotional, like just thinking about a woman and a man having a conversation and they're in a relationship, and when the woman feels something intensely, they cry, right? Or they feel, tearful. Having a conversation and you crying and the man seeing you, and men are dichotomous thinkers, not as emotional as women, then you see that and you're like, well, I don't even know what you're saying because you're just crying over it. You can't really hear what's being communicated. So that's why it's important to take a minute, really process what it is you feel, get it out to somebody, if that's talking to a friend, if it's journaling, if it's reading, giving yourself positive affirmations, whatever else, something to understand what it is you feel and what it is you need so that you can communicate that to the person in a way that they can hear you.
I had a relationship with my girlfriend. We just kind of broke up about 2 months ago. But previously I had sent her a text and I wait till I thought was the proper time. And, basically she watching TV and hanging out, and that kind of got frustrating. So I told her, and I said within a text, faith without works is dead. And I gave her some examples like that. And then another text, I said, you can never grow fully into God without building some income or some economic way also to work with it. And those two texts, she left. So,
Well, I'm going to tell you why, as a woman. Huh? That sounds like you disregarding the emotion that she may have felt and that she was saying that she was feeling. You thinking about what you could do in regards to like problem solving and stuff. There was not any emotional acknowledgement in those
well,
statements.
I have to tell you where I was in it. It was getting frustrating. I'm about growth. And if we're not growing, then it's gradually becoming not beneficial, no matter how beautiful you look or those other kind of things. And I did not feel she was going on the road of seeking improvement, going to school, what have you. She had gotten into a crutch.
So why not say that instead of those sayings about faith and God?
I felt not directly, and maybe that was my problem, that I did not address it directly with her, but I would go around to being, you know, hey, I found this particular school, I found this particular job possibility, and I would tell her little things like that before I came with those type of texts. But the indication was there. I felt that, you know what, I need you to show more effort to do something productive. And she wasn't getting there. And
That was
I didn't feel,
her directly what the problem was. I think that's an issue. I mean, you passively said it by trying to hint, and that doesn't tell her directly because she can interpret that as something different. We all grow up raised by different humans that are flawed because we are human and we all are flawed, but they show you what communication looks like, what love looks like, based on, you know, just what you saw in your upbringing, and then your experience after that, your experiences in life and in other relationships, and that could be at work, home, anywhere. That also teaches you what's normal for you based on your experience. So if that is the case, then she may not even know that you hinting this stuff because you didn't directly say it. And then it's frustrating when you ain't say nothing the whole time, but you just hinting. And then all of a sudden, you want to send me something about faith without work is dead. So you trying to tell me I'm not work or I don't have faith? Like, which one is it? Like, it's confusing in that perspective. But you know what you meant. But it was a reason that you hesitated to tell her directly. It sounds like you didn't think that she would hear you or would take offense to it.
yeah, I mean, I could have did both things, but I think, you know, I'm just telling you about the hints, but there were other things that I believe I did to share with her. And I may have had a direct conversation. However, if she really wanted to maintain the relationship, she would have at least tried to share and talk about it and not just read. That's my opinion also.
That one there. Because you didn't directly talk to her. You can't even think of the time that you did. So it's not necessarily fair to say. And then if she felt judged, then that's why she was like, I ain't got time for this. I don't want to be judged. And then all you had to do was tell me what you want directly. It's a lot of different perspectives. That's just our human nature and our experiences. But in the future, in the relationship, with Rudy, don't do that.
Okay, all right. Well, that relationship, I believe, because I didn't mention how many years we've been working at this also. Several years, up and down. But that's a whole nother thing. I could talk to you about that particular relationship for a long time. One day, maybe. We are toward the end of our program. I mean, we've had a lot we've talked about.
Yeah.
May I ask, what are some of the other things that we can talk about in upcoming shows? Can we talk about consciousness and subconsciousness? How about that? Or emotional intelligence?
Oh, I love emotional intelligence.
Okay, so let's talk about designing the show about emotional intelligence. It may take a little bit longer than we got time here, so I'll text you afterwards. But this is our 8th show, I believe, and I think it's very beneficial and fruitful. And hopefully, people out in the audience can get something from it, as well as if they have questions, share, and we will continue. I like this. Let me just share that we had a seminar in Galveston that was about why does everyone seem like they're going crazy. One person said that some people are trying to maintain norms and standards, while there's a lot of other people that don't want to live by norms and standards, and they're conflicted. And that makes people, quote unquote, crazy. Also, they mentioned about conscious mind, subconscious, that we have 5% subconscious as maybe a 20-year-old person, 15-year-old person, 95% consciousness. And I explained that my conscious self was seeking for approval, attention, love, all of those things, and girded by my emotions, my feelings, my urges. And so that's why I acted in a certain way. But when I got to that dark place, I pulled back and worked with my subconscious that my dad taught me. He taught me to go to work every day, to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, read and try to have intelligence, and just and don't always listen to what other people say, because not everybody has their best interests at heart. Try to find a barometer within yourself. And those are the things that I learned from my dad. And when I hit that dark place, those are the things that I drew upon. And those things were in my subconscious that he embedded in there. Even though he's not here anymore, those lessons are there. So this was some of the things that we learned at the seminar. But emotional intelligence, we'll talk about that. Would you like to share about your practice and who you are in case somebody's out there?
Of course, I am Jennifer Kane. I'm a licensed chemical dependency counselor, as well as a licensed professional counselor, and a certified anxiety treatment provider. I am in the Bay Area, Clear Lake. My office is there. I also
You're in
offer
Clear Lake?
Clear Lake, yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
on Bay Area Boulevard.
Okay, I pass by there all the time.
Oh well, you got to come visit one day. I'm
Okay,
in.
I sure will. I
I'm in
sure
that
will.
place. We
And
have.
maybe you'll give me a lock of purple hair.
Oh, don't be using that lock for no bad. But anyway, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I have three other, well, it's a total of three therapists that work with my practice, one Spanish speaking, so she is bilingual. And we primarily focus on addressing any issues in the community, but anxiety is the number one that we've noticed the most, and that's what we are proud to provide services with.
Thank you. And I want to give an invitation to your other therapists to come join you if you would like that,
I
or
would.
anybody that you would approve to join you. I want to put that open
I'll
invitation out there.
I will let both of the ladies know, and I think that that would be a great addition
Yes,
to.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, we've had a very good episode, and I will share more information and talk with you about emotional intelligence and our next episode. Thank you, and we will see you next time on Minding Our Mental, excuse me, yeah, Minding Our Mental Wellness. And